Fathers and ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to introduce our next speaker, Sister Janet Baker, who is a religious sister of mercy from Marion, Pennsylvania. Sister was a great, great help to us back in 2005 and 2006 when we were undertaking the Second Synod of Allentown. And we learned a lot from her in setting up the synod. She had worked on the synod in Philadelphia before she came to us, and she was especially a great help to me in running the meetings, the different synod meetings, and of also helping in some of the implementation work too. And she's here today to talk about consensus building and group dynamics, which is her field of expertise. So, Sister, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Monsignor. Ladies and gentlemen, it is always a privilege for me to be any part of building the church, and that's why I'm here. And of course, Monsignor James knows all he has to do is ask me, and I'll say yes. So I'm here. One of the marvelous things about parish councils, I didn't know the gentleman's name who spoke last. Where are you? You didn't give us your name. Paul? Paul, thank you. I think Paul made it very clear to you that it's a wonderful opportunity for everybody at the meeting to grow spiritually, because I think we begin to appreciate the depth and the challenge of being who we are. One of the things that I have great bias for is getting good people together and not wasting their time. How many people in this room, and you have to tell the truth, because you have to, how many people in this room love to go to meetings? One. One. I was counting on maybe two. Most people do not, and I will tell you why. It's because we meet, but we don't facilitate our meetings. Seriously. One of the things we know about human nature, and we all have it, we all have some degree of neuroses. Is that not true? We're all neurotics. Did you ever read that book? You must read it. It's very consoling. But the fact of the matter is, everybody brings something to the table that's a little off. And structure, I was taught at Temple University that structure neutralizes neuroses. It's a pretty good line. What it simply means is this: when you gather people together, many good groups of good people can make very flawed decisions. And the primary reason is they have never given themselves the structure through which to communicate. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about. And I'm going to challenge you. How many of you spent some time in front of the TV this summer watching the Summer Olympics? Yeah, we all did. We didn't go to meetings, did we? No. But we like the Olympics. Why do we like the Olympics? We watch people who have achieved incredible skills using strength. But one commentator made it really clear to me, the two things that were characteristic of all of them was self-discipline and sacrifice. I believe the Catholic Church should be aiming to have gold medals in our world, in our very confused and upsetting world that we live in. And the only way we're going to do that is if we accept a degree of self-discipline and sacrifice. The process I'm going to introduce you to is not exactly new, but it is extremely effective, but it requires self-discipline and sacrifice. I think I'm just bordering on, I would like to always say, these are the assumptions I'm making, and having listened to all the presenters prior to me, I believe, in fact, this is true. That you do have a document that is diocesan-wide. You're one in a mission, the mission of the church. You have, for the most part, I believe, have some form of a parish mission statement. I do have a handout over on the table which you may take with you. And I recommend, and I was very pleased to see that the mission statement I read had only 3 sentences. That's all it needs, maybe 4. It should say 4 things: who we are, what we value, what we do, for whom we do it. That's it. Very brief. I was also happy to hear that you have started doing some type of strategic planning, because it gives you a basis or a criteria around which you will measure your decisions. Do you understand? So I think it's a good foundation. And then lastly, the meetings themselves. And this is where things can sometimes go wrong. First of all, it is the ideal of groups to come to some common sense of agreement on something, and that is what the meaning of consensus is. But consensus cannot be forced. You cannot say at the beginning of the meeting, at the end of this meeting, we're going to have consensus on something. That's really pushing. That's not consensus. Consensus takes patience, takes time, and I would imagine that most of the consensus building will happen at your strategic planning meetings. Because when I looked at your parish council agenda, one of the agendas, it's obvious that there's a lot of information being given and talked about. Isn't that true? At least I saw that. And here and there, they will have to make some decisions. Now, simple, practical decisions, like what time are we going to meet or where are we going to meet, I mean, a hand vote is fine. The larger the issue, the more it deserves consensus. And the more concrete the issue, the more likely people are to disagree, because it has so many variables in it. And sometimes the only way is to take a quick vote and get on with life. However, I'd like to suggest that whenever you take a vote on anything, and there could be 1 or 2 members who vote nay. You're laughing, you know that person, I know him too. He was on my parish council when I was the principal, and I just waited to the end of the evening when he was going to raise his hand. No, he wasn't in agreement with anything we said before, and it's now 5 of 9. Thank you. However, you must listen. What is the point of your dissent? Respect the dissent, because sometimes there's truth in it. And keep it, tuck it away. Look at it a little bit later. However, let's say that the goal is consensus. As I said, the effort to build it takes patience. You must have a clear mission. You must have a clear, particular goal and a clear understanding of the members' roles. They did a study nationally to find out why some decisions, very important decisions, the example of Challenger, the Challenger that destroyed, there's actually a video on it that points out what was the crux of the problem. And it simply was they made an untested assumption. There are 4 reasons why good groups make flawed decisions. One is fuzzy goal. And never assume that just because you say the same word, you mean the same thing. Serious. Give me 2 words to describe a dog, John. Small and large. That's very poetic. Father, can you give me 2 words to describe a dog?
Hairy and loud.
Hairy and loud, all right? It's a simple word, isn't it? But every single word, we all have our own perceptions of what that means. So when you say the goal is this, be absolutely sure that the council, everybody has the same understanding of the goal. Because if it's fuzzy, you're not going to find consensus. The second reason is lack of clarity of the role. Now, I think the role that you have is very clear. It was made very clear this morning. You are consultative to the pastor. You bring your time, your treasure, your talent. That's what you do. The one thing that can go wrong is when parish council members overstep their role. Now, I think one of the priests said that they wore something that identified them at Mass, was that? and that people knew who the parish council members were. You don't want parish people making deals with parish council members. I'm serious. Or get to you to say, would you get the pastor to do this or to do that? You can get him to do it, you're on the council. You don't really want that. That's not your role. That's why I mean knowing where your role ends and where it begins. You can never speak on behalf of the pastor. Or even say, now at the last council meeting, now don't tell anybody. That's not your role. You're not the loudspeaker. Do you understand what I'm saying? So clarity of role is very, very important. And dedication to confidentiality is very important. Not even a raise of the eyebrow, not even a twist of the head. Well, you know how it is. We can communicate in many ways, you know that. That's not your role. Your role is to serve the church at that meeting, under the light of the Holy Spirit. The third reason is because we don't have clear data or information that's out of date, or we don't know. Well, how many children are in the school? A council member should know that. Or how many people are in the parish? Parish council member should know that. They should know the history of the parish. They should know its parameters. That's the kind of thing they need to know to make good decisions. You should also know what's happening in the civic area and how it could impact. And I noticed on one of the strategic plannings, it looked as if you did a scan, they call it a scan, social scan, to see what's going on in other areas that could help you or be up against you. Very important. But clear data. And the fourth one is untested assumptions. Now people get that a little bit mixed up. Have you ever been at a meeting when someone said, I don't think the seniors in our parish would like to do that? Somebody heard that said, didn't they? And you turn and you say, really? How many seniors did you talk to? Well, my neighbors told me this. And it becomes all the seniors. You understand what I'm saying? It's called an untested assumption. There are ways to test and to find out what the seniors or the juniors or the women or the divorced or the homeless or the caregiver, what their needs are. It's called a focus group. And you can find facilitators who know how to conduct a focus group. I would caution you about open forums. I read the document, I know there's a provision for that, but it could be and it can be a bloodbath. I'm not kidding. And most of the people that shed the blood are your pastors. Because people can misunderstand what an open forum is, and they really believe it's my opportunity to humiliate the pastor. I have seen it done. It's very pathetic. Given now you could have a good facilitator, and facilitator training is available. And you'll find that some of the people in your parish do it in their own job. I mean, I know we have several people in our parish who do it for a living. And so I was responsible for training and hiring facilitators for the Archdiocese of Philadelphia for about 10 years. And I would look for people that had some of that experience. It is a skill. Just because you think you can run a meeting does not mean you can facilitate. Facilitate is meaning that you have a really good objectivity about what's going on, and you'll also understand the rules of how people work together. So I would strongly recommend that if you have people saying things anecdotally, I don't mean you cut them off and say, it's not important, you don't know what you're talking about. We're not going to do any of that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the chair or the facilitator, if you have one, might raise the question, perhaps that's just an assumption we need to test. We need to look at. You understand what I'm saying? Because many times people will make very emotional statements for something they have a passion for. I was at a council meeting and I observed many council meetings, and there was a person in the room that never spoke the entire meeting until, again, they always wait till the end, and then broke down in tears because nothing was being done for the single men in the parish and the single women in the parish. And everybody kind of went, again, what do we do about this? Well, we might get them together and find out if there is a need. But nobody can speak on behalf of. And while I know that you do have representatives from different ministries, even there, always be cautious that you don't let them speak on behalf of the whole ministry. All right? I have a whole other presentation I could give you on the 5 keys to excellent communication. And the first one is never speak for anybody else, ever. Not your wife, not your child, not your pastor, not anybody. Never speak for anybody else. And we were taught at Temple, unless you have a mouse in your pocket, then you can say we. Other than that, All right. So you see what I mean by those things can really catch you off guard, and you don't even know they're happening. So the accurate data is important and the accurate assumptions. Now, let me talk about dialogue. I'm going to give you at the very end of this presentation 2 references on dialogue. Dialogue, and Pope Francis makes use of this term frequently. I'm not sure whether he's referring to the formal dialogic process or not. There's a whole institution in New England called contemplative dialogue, and it has nothing to do with spirituality. But it has everything to do with the difference between dialogue and debate. And there is a reason, and there is a difference. I think I have it in here. Let me see. Next one? Yes. I'm going to talk to you about what dialogue, real dialogue, does as opposed to debate. Dialogue encourages listening. Someone told me one time, you never learn anything with your mouth open. Interesting, hmm? Yes. It encourages understanding. It assesses diverse perspectives, and it leads to creativity. Okay. Whereas debate often imposes a single voice or one emphatic voice. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been a Sister of Mercy for 60 years. I have been in meetings with women for 60 years. I know what I'm talking about. When I say someone can get up to the microphone and be eloquently wrong, but because they speak well and nice and get everybody fired up, everybody follows them. So what dialogue tries to do is give that equal voice all around. Sometimes debates, and it's intended, and if you've ever been into debating in high school, you're supposed to do some of this. It rejects the opposition and contradicts even others' ideas, just contradicts them. Again, maybe based on truth, maybe based on assumptions. It cuts off others' views, and therefore you lose the wisdom of the whole. It often supports the status quo and resists change. And lastly, it creates winners and losers. You do not want winners and losers in a community. I'm going to go back to. All right, what does dialogue consist of? It consists of this. There's 4 stages of it. And this is how I would recommend when you're making decisions or even, quote, discussing a point, evaluating an action, proposing a new idea. This takes time. It's well worth it. You raise the point, whatever the issue might be. Should we have a singles club? All right, I'm making this up. I ask people, write something down. What's your point on that? Go ahead, just do it now. Write something down. Please, just write a sentence. I'm not single, I don't know. I wish I were. No, that's not the part of it. All right. Now, the reason of the writing down is for this. Not everybody can speak off the top of their head. Extroverts love to do it. And when it gets out there, they even edit it while it's out there. That's why they go around in circles. Introverts hold back because they have to process. But 90% of the time, they've got the answer. So you respect the fact that you have both in your group, and by writing it down, it gives those persons who think inside the time to write something, and the people who burst outside might limit themselves. You kind of have to watch the room because somebody's writing volumes. Then you ask one at a time, without debate, without interruption, without comment from anybody. Everybody has a chance to give their perspective. I'm going to call on 3 people. Do I have time? All right, I have victims or volunteers. Could I have a volunteer to read your sentence? Okay, then I'm taking victims. Yes, sir. Big and loud voice.
Singles club should be given consideration if there's an unmet need.
Very good. Excellent. I commented on it. Slap me. Father.
Singles don't have to do group in the parish.
Okay? Another one. Come on. Victims, volunteers. Paul?
Singles Club could bring happiness to members of our community.
Okay. You heard 3 very different perspectives, didn't you? Now, I'm not going to say which one of them is better or worse. I'm not saying anything because I'm listening. After everyone has spoken, then the chair or the facilitator probes some of what they heard with opening questions, not debating questions, not putting down questions. I heard the word happiness. Who used that word? Paul. Tell me a little bit what you meant by that.
Well, as somebody who's not single and enjoys thoroughly the relationship that I have with my wife, I think that that's not also not.
Okay, thank you. What he did, you see what he did? Now you got to what he really meant. Not until a person is invited to share more about what they said do you really get the fruit of it. So the second round of going around is asking questions. And I encourage the group members to ask one another. Then I asked them to stop and listen. What did I hear? Not what did I say, what did I hear? I'm going to test you again. I'm a sister, I give tests. What can I say? You've heard a lot of input this morning. There's a woman in the back of the room, she has a frown on her face. I'm going to make her stand up. She's not going to like me. Could you stand up, please? Thank you. What is your name? Pat. Wonderful. Pat, if you could sum up in one sentence, what did you learn from everything you heard this morning?
How to apply the things that I learned when I go back to my parish as the chairperson of the council. How can I put it into effect with the help of my pastor and the members?
Very good, thank you. Okay, that's what she heard. She's prompted, how can I do this? She's on the how, wavelength, which is fine. What you'll find out is that when you have a group gathered like that, there's a common thread, and that's where you begin. That's the beginning of consensus. What was the common thread? The gentleman whose name I'm going to give to you, David Bohm, B-O-H-M, was a physicist, and he designed this process comparing it to opening a folded napkin on the table. And you lifted off each fold, and the truth was in the center. So that going around asking everybody to just say what you think, probe it with questions, what did you hear? It's the seed of your consensus. And it's a whole lot better than just saying, let's talk about a singles club. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because anybody and everybody could have something to say, and some person has nothing to say because they don't know how to get in. It's like jumping rope, you know? You don't know when to get in. You're shaking your head, yes. Have you had this in the youth group? You ever seen this happen?
No, but I've been in meetings or conversations with people where I don't know how to.
You don't know how to jump in because there's no opening. Also, you might know, have you ever observed that when you're talking to someone about something that happened to you, what do they normally do? Do they ask you a question? What do they do? They tell you about what happened to them. It's merely steal the airtime. I would recommend to all of you, if you're in this role at all, make it a practice when anybody says anything to you, ask them a question. Nice question about what they just said. And you will get far more information and you will have a conversation, not a debate. Hear what I'm saying? So I'm here to talk to you about those underlying things that you don't see, that you don't find written in the bylaws, that you don't find written in the document, but it's human nature. And in order to make the best use of the gifts and talents and time of your people, I recommend you try dialogue rather than debate. Does that make any sense at all? You're nodding yes, I hope it does. I would just say very few things, and I say more in the notes I'm handing out to you about agenda. Be sure agendas are given out plenty ahead of time. Not say in a week, but at least people should have them before they get there. Pay attention to the environment, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. Where you are and how things are set up and how you feed people and how you give them the opportunity to speak is called the environment. Be sure you have some rules for process. If you don't use dialogue, you need some kind of ground rules for how everybody gets a chance to say something about what you want to know. Calendars are very important to make in advance. I think you've already said that. Because absence, every time anyone is absent from a group, it is a different group. You can't pick up where you left off because it's a different group. So presence and attendance are essential. And a calendar is good for that. Obviously, minutes, I did say something in there. And all of these will build success. What builds failure? When any of the previous parts are just taken for granted. Okay, we'll have this, we'll have that. No, you need details. When attendance is irregular, when members argue for personal agenda, and when action steps are not defined. The one thing I did not see on this agenda was action steps and who's going to do them. I strongly recommend you put that at the bottom of your agenda when you pass it out for the next meeting, and it has to be at the bottom of the minutes. By the way, minutes do not need to include he said, she said, we said, they said. Just keep to the agenda and what decision was made as a result of that agenda. Make them sparse because very few people read them. Well, this doesn't show up so well, so I'm going to read it to you. The book I'm referring to, Dialogue, Unfolding Meaning, is by David Boehm, and Daniel Yankelovich did an excellent treatise on the magic of dialogue. You have to really learn it and believe in it to make it work. He has a wonderful chapter in the book, and it's more or less about the whole nation. We are a nation in need of true dialogue, and we probably need to say that all the time. I know there'll be time for questions and answers after it, and I'll be here if you want to ask me personally, but my job, I thought, was to talk about facilitating, and you know, facilitators aren't all expensive. They really aren't. And you may train a few people in your own parish to do it, or in your own diocese to do it, but it's very helpful, especially if things can become contentious, because nobody gets put on the spot. The facilitator takes that. You understand what I'm saying? Makes sense. And if you want consensus, take time. Let it come. Don't force it. I often compare it to pregnancy. You know, you just can't force it. Consensus will be born when it's time. And I wish you the very best. And in the name of God and everybody else, I thank you for the generous service you give to our church. I thought when I entered the community I was going to change everything. I didn't, but I think I had a little influence, and it's worth your time. Thank you for your attention.